Latch the windows, lock the doors, and put the kids to bed. It's time for another episode of
Tales from the Garage!
Hey guys, I'm back. Happy mid-holidays. Christmas went fast, but we got New Year approaching, and by the time a lot of you see this, probably New Year's will be here. Well, I guess the temperatures were in a cold snap here, and they've just finally kind of got to the point where that's mood lighting. Got to the point where I just can't do it out there. I'm freezing. It's probably 20 degrees in my garage right now. And we don't have any warm days planned. So recently I was putting off videos and watching the weather forecasts. And we'd have a day when it was 20 degrees warmer than the day before and the day after. So I would try to go in and do a video then. Though it was still pretty damn cold in the garage anyway. So it's maybe 50 in there at the time. So I just thought I got a couple things planned, but to keep the video shorter, I'll break them up and do a couple different videos, maybe spaced out a little bit, a few days apart. I'm going to show a couple things that I got for Christmas. Not a whole lot of music-oriented things, but not music per se. I'm not going to show the movies and stuff like that I got that have nothing to do with music. Just a few, some things that maybe some folks would be interested in, depending on the, people that watch my things. I saw this audiobook. It's an MP3 disc, which they're starting to do now for audiobooks. Instead of having these multiple CD sets, I have one CD set that's 11 CDs of an audiobook. And that's what this would be, pretty much. They're condensing these on MP3 CDs, which is fine by me because it's, you're not worried so much about audio quality when it's only somebody speaking. It's not music performances or anything. This is a 10.5-hour book, which would be on 9 or 10 CDs. So it's on a single MP3 CD, and it's just somebody reading their book, if I can get this open. Pretty generic stuff. Now, you would have to be probably close to my age to have any interest in Johnny Carson. But when I was growing up, Johnny Carson was it as far as late night programming goes. There were no late night hosts besides him. When I grew up, David Letterman wasn't even around. And so, I've always had an affinity with him, and to me, nobody ever replaced him in terms of the quality of interviews that he did. I watched David Letterman for the first year and a half that he was on religiously because I loved him. That was like 1980 or something like that. And then he pissed me off, and I never watched him again because he had a musician on that he totally disrespected, and it was a guy. I think it was David Amram. And instead of letting David Amram speak, who doesn't get much TV time, or didn't, I don't even know if he's still around, he basically turned the whole segment into nothing but a joke. And just waiting for David Amram to say something or to demonstrate an instrument that he had there so that Letterman could make a joke. And it just pissed me off so much that I watched Letterman literally once in all the years after that. And that was when Warren Zevon was on, and he was dying, and he did his last kind of public appearance on David Letterman's show. And that was many, many, many years later. It was literally the only time I ever watched Letterman after that. And then I learned the difference between, as an interviewer, Carson and Letterman, because Carson basically set the stage and let the people talk. And he had interesting people. It wasn't just all movie stars, and folks like that. And recently, one of the basic cable nostalgia channels I have, every night, 7 nights a week, is playing reruns of complete Carson shows that are from the early 70s to the late 80s or early 90s. So it's not everything, but it's a solid chunk of his stuff. And I DVR those every night, and I watch them, depending on who the guests are. You know, a lot of times I'll fast forward to certain guests. You know, a lot of movie actors just there to plug whatever movie was current. But he had a lot of guests on that I really liked and would watch, and some more human interest people that weren't celebrities that he would find from like mid-America, and they had some kind of unusual hobby or something, and he would interview them. And I discovered this audio book is also, I guess, a print book written by Johnny Carson's lawyer, the guy who was his lawyer for about 20 years. And this is fairly recent. This came out, and the audio book is unabridged. It's 10 hours and 50 minutes on one disc, and you know, it's interesting. It paints all his quirks and his maybe not so good side that you didn't often see on TV. I've only started to listen to it, so that is probably of very little interest to most people. But I happen to like Carson, and you know, sort of things I'm interested in. The next thing is another audio book that I'm sitting here. I can't figure out now how I had the wrap on here, and I was trying to keep it on, but it just came off. So oh well. Another audiobook, Jerry Garcia. I'm not actually a hardcore Grateful Dead fan. Just looking at what I've got by the Grateful Dead, I thought I had maybe a half dozen albums. I might have a few more than that, but not many. And literally none of the albums that I like in terms of the Grateful Dead are ones that their fans like. I don't know. You know, my tastes run toward their more obscure stuff. But I'm not a hardcore fan. I like the more experimental edge of them and less the country song-oriented things. But I've had a fascination with Jerry Garcia as a person and as an artist, much more so than like the Grateful Dead's music. He also had he did a solo career and had several side bands, and one of the side bands was with Jerry Grisman. And I saw a documentary on him and Jerry Grisman, which I figured would just be like a country-ish thing. And there was some really great instrumental, like Eastern-sounding music in there, which I never expected to come from them. And I actually picked up a DVD last year, I think it was, of the two of them in the studio and working on some music and some live performance stuff. And it's very much not like the country stuff you would expect, and not like the Grateful Dead music, and it was really interesting stuff. So I'm interested in Garcia kind of as a creative force and as a person. His thoughts. He was a really nice guy, and this person. Dennis McNally interviewed him over the years, I guess for various magazines and publications, whatever. And naturally would have a tape recorder there so he could record what Garcia was saying and then, you know, put it down in writing. And what he did is he published those tapes. So the quality of the recording isn't that great of the actual tapes. And these are all through a whole bunch of years, so it's a pretty decent picture of Garcia's interviews and his thoughts over the years. It's not just him, shamelessly plugging whatever his current album was. And again, I just barely started on this. That's it. I think there's an interview on here also that Dennis McNally didn't conduct, that somehow he got a hold of the tapes. But this one is on CD. This isn't an MP3 disc, and it's 5 CDs and it's 5.5 hours of archival interviews. I really can't wait to kind of jump into this. And Jerry Garcia's daughter actually does like a spoken forward at the beginning of this. So obviously it's got some approval from folks within his own family. So one of his daughters actually speaks for several minutes before the excerpted tapes start. So this is another one I'm very interested in hearing. So that's kind of a music thing. And what else? Another thing that's not music per se, but Pete Erskine, the drummer, composer, band leader, I guess he's still best known as the one-time drummer of Weather Report, because that's how they're selling the book, kind of. But thankfully, it is not just a chronicle of his Weather Report days. It's all of his musical history, which I'm interested in. And also, he was an ECM recording artist, too, as a leader. He had a great trio, with a great piano trio with the late John Taylor on piano. John Taylor from Azimuth. He's one of my favorite pianists. He passed away a few years ago. And so, that was the fact that he recorded quite a bit for ECM, and also he's got a lot of solo projects, all with different musicians, and also recorded with John Abercrombie and John Abercrombie's trio for a number of years in the early 80s. Interesting coincidence. John Abercrombie passed away recently, and I've been mourning his death pretty much ever since. And the day before Christmas, I noticed on Facebook that there's a John Abercrombie Appreciation Society. I don't really go much on Facebook, but I decided, well, it's there. Let me join. Let me be a member of that, and this way I can go on and read all the posts or whatever. And so I sent a request to join the John Abercrombie Appreciation Society group. And Christmas morning, just before I'm getting ready to leave the house to go to my sister's for Christmas, I get an email saying, "Oh, you've been approved, to be a member of the Abercrombie Appreciation Society." And I'm like, "Oh, that's great! Christmas morning, that's nice." I go over to my sister's house. I open this. And I'm like, oh, great, the Pete Erskine book. And I'm completely forgetting that Pete Erskine kind of played with John Abercrombie. I wasn't thinking of that at the time. And I just randomly opened the book to a page. And the page that I opened the book to, there's a picture of John Abercrombie. And just the very first page I opened the book to, which is one of those weird coincidences. And it's just like, and it took me aback for a second, because I'm like, what's a picture of John Abercrombie doing in Pete Erskine's book? I'd kind of temporarily forgotten that Pete Erskine had played with Abercrombie, and because the way the book is sold, it's the picture is of Weather Report on the cover, and an autobiography and chronicle of Weather Report. So I wasn't even sure 100% whether or not there would be mention of his other projects. But it's very strange that the page I opened it to is a picture, and just a picture of John, not even a picture of Pete Erskine with John, but just a picture of John Abercrombie by himself. And I just froze for a moment. And I'm like, what's a picture of John Abercrombie doing in this book? And then I'm in my head going, and I'm like, oh, wait, that's right, he played with John Abercrombie. But then looking through it, there's not that many other photos of him, with Abercrombie, or I don't think there's any other photos of Abercrombie by himself. And the page I opened it to, which I didn't really prepare, I should have, I guess, was quite interesting because you know what? I just passed by it and I just missed it. There was no other pictures on either page, so this was the page that I opened it to. So all you see is a picture of John Abercrombie there, and as you can see, there's no Pete Erskine. There's no other pictures even on the two pages, and it just took me back, and it just froze. And I had Abercrombie on the mind a bit because I had just joined the Appreciation Society, but I wasn't. I wasn't thinking that I would be seeing Abercrombie in this book, and there he is. So that was one of those weird coincidences that just happens so much to me lately. And the other thing is, I just found out about this album, which looks to me to be. I got to take out the Obi strip now. It's that album, but you can't see what album it is because of the Obi in there. It's a Japanese reissue of an album that I'm sure came out in the U.S. years ago, that I just found out about. And it's a concert given just by the duo of Mike Mainieri on vibraphone and Warren Bernhardt, the keyboard player. The credits on here say Warren Bernhardt's playing electric and acoustic piano and synthesizers. But my first listen through to the album, I don't hear any synthesizers. I just hear electric and acoustic piano. But I have to give it a real close listen to. And to whatever extent you can hear it, it's actually playing in the background. So I knew this was not a new album. I knew this was an older album being reissued, at least in Japan. And, I like I like both musicians. The Vibes piano and, electric keyboard duo really, is one that, besides Gary Burton and Chick Corea, isn't really done much. So I thought, oh, that's great. And so I requested this for Christmas, and when I got it, I took a look at the recording dates, and I realized it was recorded at a live concert in Montreux in July 1978. Well, I'm not a real big Fusion fan, and these guys have done their share of Fusion, and a lot of it I really like from them. Their Fusion stuff is okay with me for the most part. But most Fusion for me, I'd say escapes me. I've tried a lot to get into it. I've literally got every single Weather Report studio album and probably most of their official live albums. And yet I don't appreciate, there's a lot of Weather Report just doesn't do it for me. Things here and there, the first album with Miroslav Vidas, I don't think they ever did a better album than that, actually. So they kind of started on a high point and went down from there. And to me, their stuff sounds dated. And actually, most of the Fusion stuff sounds incredibly dated in a bad way. There's recordings out there, especially from the 1960s, that you hear them and you know that they were recorded in the 1960s. But there's good elements to sounding dated. Sometimes there's a dated which is good, as in there was a certain way of writing horn charts in the 1960s, which seemed to have been abandoned after the early 70s. And yet it was a really good way of writing horn charts. And, to me, so when I hear that sound, it may sound dated, but it's in a good way. Then there's the bad dated things, like a lot of the funk and stuff like that, and a lot of the music that has no dynamics because it's just, like the bass lines are so repetitive, and the funk element is just tiresome. So there's good and bad dated stuff. But one of the albums, from the Fusion era that I do kind of like, from 1978, was just a blind buy. It was the Blue Montreux album, which maybe a lot of people have, maybe a lot of people don't. Which is essentially Warren Bernhardt on keyboards and Mike Mainieri on vibes and Michael Brecker on saxophone and Steve Jordan on drums. Steve Jordan must have been really young when he did this. Steve Jordan, I believe, was Dave Letterman's first drummer for a long time. And Tony Levin is on bass. Eddie Gomez plays bass on one track during this concert that was recorded in Montreux. Steve Kahn is on guitar on most of the tracks. Randy Brecker is on a handful of tracks. He's not on all of them. Actually, the only guy that's on all the tracks from the Blue Montreux sessions that have been released is Warren Bernhardt. And Mike Mainieri plays on all but one track. So Tony Levin on bass, Steve Jordan on drums. It's a really good band. And Larry Coryell does like 2 guest appearances, but really, I think is overhyped. But I guess at the time he was pretty well known. And I bought this as a blind buy. I don't know. This may have been the first Mike Mainieri album I bought. I'm not sure if it was or not. One of the first Warren Bernhardt albums I bought. And I bought this at a time when I had discovered ECM, was heavily into the ECM artists, and started expanding out from there into more mainstream jazz, and then more current at the time, electric, modern jazz. And this was recorded in July 1978. And I really like this album. It's the elements that it has that are dated in a bad way are really very few. And it's not such a fusiony thing that would have turned me off. It was a really good album. And, and it came fairly early in my discovery of jazz after ECM, when I started expanding out to more mainstream jazz artists and, buying things like Wes Montgomery and Miles Davis, but also getting what was then, this came out in probably early 79, probably at that point, like the more current jazz that had other influences like rock in there and stuff. And I really kind of liked this album. I liked it enough that I went out a number of years ago to look for the CD. You saw the cover. I'm not going to pull the Obi off of this. This is a Japanese CD version. I'm not sure now if the CD came out in America. I want to say there is a version that came out in the U.S. And maybe the only reason I have a Japanese version is because I bought it earlier, bought it possibly before the American release on CD. It's the exact same album in terms of the tracks, but why? And it sounds better than my crackly vinyl. I will say that. I still like the album and have it on CD. A while after I bought this, I found out something I did not know, and that is there was a Volume 2. Volume 2 came out on album, apparently, and I'm not initially, sometime after Volume 1, and like I said, Volume 1 I think came out in early 79. This Volume 2, I'm not sure when it came out. I don't think it came out right away, and I don't think it came out in America. I think the original vinyl of Volume 2, which is the same day, the same musicians, just additional material. I think that, I want to say that I think the vinyl was a Japanese-only release. And so this is, the first original album was about 52 minutes. And the second volume was about 35 minutes. But it was from the same concert. It was recorded on 2 days in July, 21st and 22nd. And I never knew of the existence of Blue Montreux 2 until I saw a very expensive Japanese CD version. I'm fairly sure that Volume 2 has definitely not come out on CD in America. And I kind of hemmed and hawed about buying this for a while because this was fairly expensive. And it's weird, it just comes in a cardboard slipcase, no less. They didn't put it in a jewel case. But eventually I was working at the time, so I gave it and I bought it. And it's just, I don't know if they played the same set for 2 nights or what. There's additional 5 tracks on here to the 7 that are on Volume 1. And it's a lot more good stuff. I mean, there's enough good things on here for me to warrant the purchase. Definitely a lot, everything is in the same vein. I don't know how they actually made the song selection when they, chose Volume 1, what tracks they would leave off, because I would have included, I would have left off maybe, a track or 2 off of this, and taken a couple from these and put it on Volume 1 if it were up to me, but at least it wasn't a bust for me buying Volume 2, which is kind of cool cover. So I bought this on CD a number of years ago, not knowing that there was a Volume 2. And then I just found out about the Warren Bernhardt, Mike Mainieri duet album recorded at Montreux literally a few weeks ago, and put it in my Christmas list. And it only dawned on me when I got the album that this is from the same nights. This is one of the 2 nights that the Blue Montreux stuff was recorded at. So apparently, I don't know if these guys came out first as a duet, and so it's, an additional, it's almost like I'm building a mini Woodstock concert with these guys, where I only knew of the one album, and then years later I find out there was a second volume, and totally just on the fly I see this one and I order it, not realizing it's from the same series of concerts. These were, the Blue Montreux were recorded on 2 nights. This was recorded just on 1 night. So apparently these guys came out, did their duo thing, and then the rest of the musicians in the band came out. That's what I'm guessing happened. So overall, it's about between the 3 albums, it's about 2.25 hours of music that's come out of this 1-2 day Montreux live jazz session. So it's weird. I had no idea, even when I put this on my wish list, that this was from the same Blue Montreux concert all these years later. So just another weird coincidence. So what else do I have? Well, I got movies that have nothing to do with music, so I'm not going to show them. And just wanted to do this video, and it looks like for now I got probably a good 3 months of not being able to get out to the garage. So for now, we're stuck in here, and I'll be back with something very soon. Instead of me going on for 3.5 hours like I normally do, I figured I'd chop these up into a couple smaller videos, and that's it. That's it. What can I say? So hopefully the audio quality. I always have audio problems inside here with the equipment I have. So I don't know. I don't think the audio is going to be as good as when I'm out in the garage, oddly enough. But such as it is. So hang on tight. There's a little bonus at the end here. There's a remix of something very special. A remix of the last surprise from my last video. A slightly different version. So here you go.